Hey friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm so excited to finally do a first trimester recap. I'm excited to be out of the first trimester, and I also didn't share I was pregnant until the second trimester, so I feel like there's quite a bit to catch you guys up on. Not only did we find out that we're pregnant, but I also got sick with you know what, and we also made this really huge move from Hawaii to Florida. So there's just a lot going on, and I'm excited to chat about it. I'm just going to dive in and start talking about the pregnancy. There were a lot of questions, especially around if I was on birth control or if we were trying, so on and so forth. I was on birth control for about 10 years. In June, I decided I was over it. I did not want to be on it anymore. And that's just for my own personal reasons. I think everyone needs to make that decision for themselves and with their doctors. But for me, I just wanted to be off of it, and I wanted to see what my normal cycle would be like, not on this medication anymore. So I got off of it in June, and in June, surprise. But I make the point of mentioning that I went off my birth control because the cycle I had in July was not normal for me, but in my mind and from my perspective, I wasn't expecting it to be normal because it was my first cycle off the pill. So I was like, oh, this is lighter, this is shorter. It wasn't normal for me, but again, from my perspective, I thought it was just my body like settling into its own cycle again. That was that. So I didn't think anything of it. Symptom-wise, I hadn't felt any different at that point. So I just assumed that was my July cycle. Really had no idea until the nausea started. And that's when I got suspicious. I kind of thought I was nauseous because I had drank alcohol. I was like, I'm just hungover, I'm just paying for it, that's why I'm nauseous. But the nausea was constant and it did not get better. I was severely nauseated for over a week. And that's when I got to the point of like, I need to figure out what's going on with me because this is not normal. I was kind of stuck between two decisions. One was, do I test to see if I'm pregnant, or do I just wait to see if my August cycle would be late, because I was coming up on it in a couple days. The, I guess, more scary things that happened was the day that I tested and got a positive test. A couple hours later, I did start spotting, very similar to what my cycle was in July. And if I had not taken that positive test, I probably would have convinced myself that I was starting my August cycle and I wouldn't have tested. But I guess the nausea and vomiting became so severe that I would have tested anyway. So when you guys were asking what was going on where I would suspect it, it was just the nausea, but I really wasn't suspecting it at all. I thought something else was wrong with me. I thought I had some sort of food poisoning, but I found out when I was just shy of 7 weeks. I had an appointment to confirm it right when I was about 8 weeks, and then my first ultrasound at 8 weeks and 5 days to confirm how far along I was and measurements and all that fun stuff, because my provider thought I was further along. I was convinced that it was like the July cycle because I thought I had a cycle. She's like, I think it may have been June, and I'm like, June? Like, that was so long ago. But just like recapping the first trimester, I can easily summarize it with nausea, vomiting, food aversions. That's really all it was, and it was so bad for me that I got to the point where I told Matt, I'm like, I don't think I could ever go through this again, because I was not eating, and I love to eat, I love to cook, I usually have a great appetite, so not being able to eat the way that I was used to was really hard for me, and I felt so guilty for not being able to eat. And the nausea wasn't anything that I could alleviate either. It was what I like to call inevitable nausea, where I knew based on the kind of nauseous I felt if vomiting would be inevitable. There was nothing I could eat that would settle my stomach. Like, I knew if I felt this level of nausea, I was going to throw up. And if I ate something, I was going to throw it up. I really only threw up in the morning when I did have an empty stomach, and sometimes at night if I wasn't able to eat much throughout the day and I had an empty stomach by the end of the day. But to give you a timeline, the nausea started around 6 weeks and it did not end until about 13 weeks. The vomiting started around 7.5 weeks, and then I got sick with, you know what, at 10 weeks. So with the nausea, and then you build on with the vomiting, and then you put on me losing my taste and smell, it was just one thing after another to the point where I'm like, how am I supposed to eat? And it was a huge struggle. I was losing weight very quickly. I didn't feel like myself anymore. And I would say around like week 9 to 10 is when my fatigue started to get really bad. And when you're that fatigued, you don't have the motivation to do anything. You don't feel inspired to get up. And when you don't feel like yourself, all those things just start to bury you in a space where you just don't feel good mentally. And although physically I was lucky that when I got sick, it really wasn't bad. No fever, no runny nose, no coughing, nothing like that. I was just even more tired. It was just a lot to handle, and just watching my body wither away in front of my eyes, it was so hard for me to watch. And when you're getting to this point where you're so fatigued, even if you're starting to feel like physically alright, like you could work out, that wouldn't have been in my best interest because I wasn't eating enough to support extra activity. Like, I was losing weight, I just was not eating enough, so I needed to work on that, work on my appetite before I could even think about when I would start my workout routine again. So I really didn't work out for a solid 6 weeks in my first trimester. I know it was a popular question about how do you work out with the fatigue, because the fatigue is so bad, but I really only felt so tired when I wasn't eating. You're not eating the energy, you're not going to have energy, and you're not going to want to work out. So once I was starting to get my taste back a little bit, my nausea was starting to go away, that's when I could really start to eat more and I started to gain my weight back. And that's when I started to get my energy back in the second trimester, and the second trimester is really when I started to ease my weight back into my workout routine. And now I don't really feel fatigued throughout the day, I just feel tired around bedtime and I sleep in a little bit later than I did pre-pregnancy. But I do feel bad for Matt because my food aversions weren't for anything in particular. It was literally like I would want something, he would make it for me, and by the time he gave it to me, I wouldn't want it anymore. And because I wasn't cooking either, Matt was just fending for himself, and he was putting barbecue sauce on what seemed like everything, and I could not stand the smell of barbecue sauce. I was like, stop eating next to me, just go eat in the kitchen. And one thing that I'll probably never eat again is papaya. Papaya was something that I ate the first day that I was severely nauseous on the Big Island, and I was trying to force myself to eat it, and I shouldn't have done that. Like, I will probably never eat papaya ever again. But I really hope that explaining this clears up why I stepped away from social media and my postings, the kind of content I shared. I wanted you guys to know so bad because it would have just made it so much easier to share what I was going through. I like being myself and being transparent, and in trying to keep the pregnancy off social media, I felt like I couldn't do that. So it was really hard for me. And I guess one thing that you guys were wondering too is if me being sick with you know what impacted the pregnancy. My providers checked me out after I recovered and they said everything looked fine, my vitals were good, and my symptoms just were really mild. Like, it's really hard for me to explain what it was like because I was so new in my pregnancy and I was so sick from just that. It's kind of hard to distinguish how much of that was just pregnancy and how much was being sick. So no, it definitely didn't help, because when I lost the sense of taste and smell was kind of when I wanted to start eating again. And if you can't taste your food, it's just texture, and that really ruins a lot of things. I would cry, like before eating, I would just cry. I would cry about thinking about food that I wanted, and I would just cry and be sad about pre-pregnancy when things were normal and I felt like myself, and I'm like, I had no idea that life was going to just completely change out of nowhere. If you're in your first trimester, or you're about to be pregnant, or you're trying, I'm not trying to scare you, it was just a very miserable experience for me. And I did try things to alleviate the nausea, like I woke up 30 minutes before my alarm, I would eat some crackers, I would go back to sleep, and then I would wake up, but I would just throw up the crackers as soon as I woke up. I tried taking my prenatals at different times, but I really don't think that that made a difference. But I was very lucky where I was only throwing up on an empty stomach, so it really wasn't that bad. And when you lose your sense of taste and you're throwing up, it's kind of like a blessing in disguise, because it's a more neutral experience. I digress. Ugh, I was just so nauseated by everything. But to talk about things that did sound good for me to eat, it's a very random list. Some of my pregnancy cravings that I had in the first trimester, thin French fries. I really wanted salads, but I didn't really eat salads because I lost the taste, and I didn't think that the texture of just all the vegetables would be very appetizing. I really wanted chai lattes, and I didn't even go in on any of these cravings really. They're just things that sounded good. Maybe I had it once or twice. Watermelon was so good. Peanut butter was a weird one because it never sounded good or appealing by itself when I thought about it, but when I actually ate it, it was like the best thing ever. And then the non-vegan things that I really wanted were hot Cheetos and Raising Cane's, and brings me to a question that you guys had where you were wondering if I would be vegan through the pregnancy, and I've been like plant-based vegan for 5 or 6 years now. I'm a huge advocate for having a lifestyle and eating pattern that you truly enjoy and makes you happy, and it's totally okay for it to evolve and change depending on what phase of life you're in or what's important to you. And I have nothing against, like, if I wanted to eat Raising Cane's, like, I don't feel bad about wanting that, but when I think about actually eating chicken, that's when I start to get kind of like grossed out. Do I really want that? Like, ugh. I've been craving eggs and toast, and eggs is something that I've been considering a lot just because they were a food that I did enjoy, and I'm a firm believer that if you really enjoy something, that you should include it in your lifestyle if you want to have it. So eggs is something I go back and forth on. And then just to talk about the move very briefly, there were some questions about if we planned the move because of the pregnancy or if they were going hand in hand. And the move was always planned. We were always going to leave Hawaii. It had nothing to do with us finding out we were pregnant. In a perfect world, we would have moved and gotten settled, maybe like next year, early next year, we would like start trying, but it just didn't work out that way. So I think I addressed a lot of the common questions that I was getting in the first part of this video, but just a couple questions that I want to end with. First is about my workout routine and how I'm adjusting it during pregnancy. I think it can be kind of challenging to talk about your workout routine in pregnancy, because really what my provider told me was that it just depends on your activity level pre-pregnancy. So looking at, you know, how long you were working out, how consistent you were working out, what types of workouts were you doing, what was like your normal pre-pregnancy, and you can keep up a normal routine during pregnancy. It's just thinking about what you did before. So if you were to like be starting a brand new workout regimen and you didn't have anything set prior to that, then that's maybe a little bit more complicated or something to talk more in depth with with your provider. So she didn't have any concerns with me still weight training, and there's been a few tweaks in terms of particular exercises. Like, I'm not working out my abs in the same way. I still engage my core in every exercise, but I'm not going to be doing sit-ups or planks. I'm not doing anything with like major twisting, really high intense exercises. Just small tweaks like that, but for the most part, a lot of the exercises I do are easily adjustable, and I'll continue to adjust as I need as the pregnancy goes on. The last question, and one of the more popular questions, is if we know the gender and if we have names picked out. And the answer is we don't know the gender. I do have my anatomy scan in a couple weeks, so we may be able to get that information at that ultrasound. I was kind of on the fence about if I wanted to find out or if I wanted to wait. I'll probably find out and do something special. I really have no idea what it's going to be. I feel like some women know for sure, like there's no way it couldn't be a boy, or like there's no way it could be anything but a girl. I am like, it really could be either one or the other. I don't have any strong inkling towards one over the other. I guess I will say that when I first saw the positive pregnancy test in my brain, I was like, oh, it's gonna be a girl. But now I really have no idea. I have dreams about it being a boy. I have no idea. Maybe it'll be fun to do a video where I go through the different old wives' tales based on like your symptoms and things like that. Matt was initially team girl, but he did flip very early on after the first ultrasound, because when he was looking at it, he said, it looks like he's on the moon. And when he said he was like, why did I say he? It must be a sign. But he's like team boy. A lot of his family is team boy, and like all of my family is team girl. I'm so excited to find out. We do have a girl name that we have loved for many, many years. Like since I was in early college, like 6 years, we've had this girl name picked out that we have loved so much, and it's really special to me. And something happened this year, and it's just kind of made me reconsider the name. But my sister reassured me. She's like, this is your kid, this is what you're going to name them and call them their entire life. And Matt is like, you cannot change this name that you agreed on for so many years. But I just feel kind of torn about it right now. We had one boy name that I think grew on Matt, and he keeps talking about it, and I'm like, I really don't think I like it anymore. But it was my idea. I had another one that was my idea that was really special to me, but now I'm overthinking that one too. You're literally naming a human for the rest of their life. Like, are they gonna like it? What nicknames could they have? I hope you guys enjoyed this video, this little update, first trimester recap, and I'm so excited to bring you guys on this journey with me. It's so crazy, and I still like at times can't believe that this is happening, but I'm excited. And I'll see you guys in my next video.